the money at stake isn't as great, but the process of buying something for 50,000, 500,000 and 5 mil is not that different. Of course, the customers that you're dealing with and the investors that you're dealing with tend to be different. The scary thing about the institutional buyers is they're actually moving down market so fast that the side hustlers and the acquisition entrepreneurs are coming up against these sophisticated buyers and they're losing. And it's a little bit like going up against a baby boomer who is buying an investment property and you're a first home buyer and you can't compete. It surprises us how often a business owner generating between $100,000 and up to $5 million doesn't have clean books. That really impacts your likelihood of being able to sell. The financial literacy of a business owner is critical. Forget about startups, right? Forget about venture-backed startups. Most businesses fail, and they fail in the first 5 years. So you're actually fast-tracking your pathway to viability and sustainability. So if you can acquire something that's doing $100,000 revenue, well, the business owner has spent a year or 2 or 3 getting to that point. And so you're buying something that is materially less likely to fail.
Welcome to Turpentine Finance, a podcast where we talk with top founders and finance leaders about what it takes to architect success. Our guests speak candidly about big business inflections, market curveballs, and how they approach decision-making so that you have the tactics and mental models for when the pressure is on. I'm your host, Sasha Orloff, founder, CEO, and self-professed finance nerd. You ready? Let's dive in. Hello. All right. So today we have Blake, who is the CEO of Flippa, the #1 platform to buy and sell online businesses. Flippa matches entrepreneurs and investors looking to invest and exit online businesses. So I can't wait to dive into this because this is going to be fascinating. But first, Blake has had a fairly incredible career, right? Leading BD at Lonely Planet, founder of Good44, a food marketplace helping small business owners create digital stores, then head of strategic partnerships at the global accounting powerhouse Xero, GM of Luxury Escapes, and for the past 6 years has been CEO of Flippa. So without further ado, Blake, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Sasha. It's going to be great to chat.
Yeah, let's dive in. All right. So I think before we get started, travel, accounting, and business flipping, what's the theme behind your career?
Is there one? Well, I think the theme is that I've been involved in growth businesses. So that's probably the theme. I've always worked for founders. And, as you and I both probably know, regardless of business model, regardless of category, business fundamentals are actually pretty similar. Execute well, do it quickly, and try to win. So, yeah, it's really just been a function of where do I want to go? What do I find interesting? And then what skills do I have that I think can add value to the organization I join? And it's actually set me up really well because you tend to gain a very, very holistic understanding of how different businesses work, how different business models work and can be architected. And then, the types of customers and the emotions that customers feel and how you appeal to them across different industries. And there actually are, commonalities and similarities across the board. So I don't know, is there a theme? It's certainly been fun. I've learned a lot about a lot of different spaces.
Cool. This is going to be a fascinating one. So first, you described Flippa as the investment bank for the 99%. What does that mean?
Yeah, so let's just be really candid about it. If you take most economies around the world, let's talk about the US, 98% of businesses are sub $10 million annually. So, investment bank for the 98% doesn't sound quite as good as investment bank for the 99%, but the reality is that most businesses around the world are sub 10 mil. That's considered subscale, it's considered small, and it's considered micro in most cases. Those business owners don't have access to investment bankers. They don't have access to M&A advisors for the most part, and they don't have access to liquidity. And so we believe that our platform can represent the needs of all business owners around the world who are subscale, who are looking to exit, who are looking to find a pathway to buyers and buyers that are interested in the assets that they own.
Awesome. And can you just give us a sense of the size and scale for people that haven't heard of Flippa before?
Yeah, so 12,000 transactions annually, in excess of $200 million traded each year, growing fast, up 25% year on year. The reality is that it's still a nascent industry. There's hundreds of millions of subscale businesses around the world. Most people don't know that you can exit a small business, and most people don't know that you can buy a small business. And so we've had to bide our time a little bit. Flippa's been around for 15 years, bootstrapped, profitable, doing well. And more recently, over the last 3 or 4 years, built a vision around enabling and democratizing the exit for everyone. And as you said, becoming that investment bank for the 99%. So we've matured the platform substantially over the last 24 months, building a feature set and a service layer that is akin to not only the great tech companies, but also the great advisory services. And so we think that our scale will substantially improve over the next 5 years as more digital business owners mature and more investors appreciate the subscale M&A asset class.
And not small at all. I mean, I think on LinkedIn, it says over 2 million users and nearly $1 billion in sales. Like, we're talking about, this is a legitimate place to buy and sell businesses. And so you specifically focus, you say, on online businesses. Is there a specific reason for that versus, say, a traditional, like a retail shop?
Yeah, so our history is in digital assets. So we've always been trading blogs, e-commerce stores, iOS and Android apps. And so obviously as those ecosystems have matured and the platform economy has taken off and those platform economy brands dominate the economy and dominate growth in small business land, for us it makes sense to stay true to our roots. So we're talking about Shopify stores, Amazon FBA, WordPress blogs, iOS and Android store apps, SaaS businesses on top of Stripe and PayPal. And more recently, in fact, only 4 weeks ago, we launched 5 additional categories. So YouTube channels, digital agencies, Chrome extensions and plugins, and AI and GPT apps. So the digital asset ecosystem isn't declining. So there's no real reason for us to move into traditional brick and mortar, which probably is declining.
Is there any type of business that you find makes it easier to sell?
Yeah. I mean, it's like traditional M&A. So growing businesses are easier to sell. Mature businesses are easier to sell. Businesses which are run well operationally and have strong unit economics are easier to sell. Businesses which have an American audience versus, say, a non-American audience are easier to sell. It's, it's funny because people say, so what goes into selling an iOS or Android app? It's like, well, the exact same things that go into selling a billion-dollar business. Now, of course, the due diligence isn't as laborious. The money at stake isn't as great, but the process of buying something for 50,000, 500,000, and 5 mil is not that different. Of course, the customers that you're dealing with and the investors that you're dealing with tend to be different.
What are some of the things that your platform does check for? And what are some maybe of the red flags? I imagine if you're going in on the sell side, you're sort of helping make it easier. You're going through and helping assist with due diligence the way that maybe an army of investment bankers do. How does your platform help? And any use of either software or AI?
Yeah. So the first thing is we have 15 different data integrations, and the 15 different data integrations enable us to connect, benchmark, ascertain pricing and or performance. And so is it due diligence? No, not at that stage, but you will pull down insights. So we'll get, average order value, we'll get LTV, we'll get churn rate, we'll get daily active usage, and it all depends on the different business models and the different integrations. So we have Google Analytics, we have Stripe, we have Amazon, we have Shopify, we have BigCommerce, we have Lazada, Shopee for the Southeast Asian clients, Google AdSense, AdMob, 15 different integrations, Xero, QuickBooks Online, and it's all designed to enable an efficient listing process, but also enables us to essentially dynamically price an asset.
Interesting.
Based on its performance and how it compares to the comp set. And then ultimately it enables buyers to better educate themselves as to the veracity and quality of an asset. So that's kind of piece one. Piece two is, yes, we do have a lot of powerful matching tech under the hood, 2 graph neural networks, trying to understand buy-side intent and trying to understand the relevance of one buyer and their similarities to another buyer so that we can programmatically match. We do that to the tune of 425,000 programmatic matches weekly. And what that essentially is trying to do is ensure that the right buyer is matched to the right seller, ensure that we can drive conversion and make that time to match quicker and quicker every month, quarter, year. As it relates to verification, we then have a human layer on top of it. We're a marketplace, right? Trust and integrity, super important. So the human layer goes in and verifies revenue and primary expenses for every asset.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how you price? I'm sure it's a sophisticated algorithm. Like, what are some of the things that would determine things of your inputs that would make a valuation potentially higher or lower for maybe the same business?
So it works really well where we have lots of data, and it doesn't work so well where we have little data. And so if you take a YouTube channel, so we launched YouTube channels, I don't know, maybe 4 to 6 weeks ago. There's probably 55 YouTube channels on the site right now. We sold $1 million YouTube channel yesterday. Now, how do we price a YouTube channel? Well, we're waiting for our benchmarks. So the system isn't that smart as it relates to that particular asset type. And so therefore you're reliant on what does the seller want? What looks to be reasonable at a digital asset multiple level? What third-party data sources can you pull in? And then ultimately, what are the buyers saying? So how are the buyers perceiving the price? So that's for the unsophisticated side of our new category expansion play, where we're still amassing that data set. Now, if it's a Shopify store, a WordPress blog, an iOS or Android app, a SaaS business on Stripe or PayPal, we have an immense data set. And so the immense data set will look at, obviously, the maturity of the business, the metrics that matter, the location, and obviously your financial performance, both revenue, cost base, and then ultimately what we would call adjusted net profit. And it will benchmark. So it will look at similarities between your asset and one another. It will provide a range, much like Zillow does for the Zestimate.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It feels as a Zestimate, but then the market ultimately dictates what the real price is.
Totally. So we will then provide pricing guidance through the onboarding experience, much like Airbnb will provide pricing guidance for how much you can sell a room in your home for. So it's very analogous to any other marketplace pricing layer. And then ultimately we let all the buyers come in through the programmatic matching, and then they start to talk to the seller. Now, as we start to see behaviors on the platform, much like in the hotels space, we will prompt sellers to reduce the cost of the asset if we're not seeing it move at the speed that we think is indicative of the marketplace.
How much of a role does Flippa play in finding the clearing price versus sort of just letting buyers and sellers negotiate sort of back and forth?
So everything is built with from the perspective of, we will offer the advice programmatically, but we will provide the optionality. And so if you jump into the hood at certain stages of the selling process, depending on the number of buyers interested or the amount of time that has gone by, we will send you a programmatic notification, text message, email, as well as platform message, which will say, much like the Uber pricing for the Uber tipping UI, it will simply say reduce by 5, reduce by 10, reduce by 15, reduce by 20%. And then it will say sell within X time accordingly. Okay. And so then they will say reduce by 5%. That will dynamically change and notify every buyer inside the deal room. The price has been updated and the buyers come flooding back in. It's the same as any marketplace, actually, Sasha. You're trying to build marketplace dynamics to every layer of the user experience.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating. It's sort of like I'm sitting in San Francisco, and during the heyday, you go buy a home. There'd be some estimate. There'd be the seller would like anchor on some price. Sometimes they lowball, sometimes it's highball. It's like 30 offers within a couple seconds. It deals there, or some sits on the market, and you can sort of see and tell how long something's been on the market, and you can see price changes. Eventually, every house sells. You get a clearing. It's sort of fascinating. And so, I guess on the buy side, how much of your buyers are individual people like me that want to be passive investors? How many are in that want to be sort of active or take over or full buyouts versus maybe institutional? Can you break that down a little?
Yeah, certainly. So certainly by quantity of buyers, there are more individuals than there are strategic, institutional, family office, etc. But by deal value, it flips for obvious reasons. And so let's just break down those buyers. I think that's a cool topic that people often ask me about. So you've kind of got, starting from low value, you've got the side hustler. They're looking for supplementary income. So they go to work every day, but maybe they can acquire a blog that is in the travel industry. Maybe they're going to buy that for, let's call it, I don't know, for easy math, $100,000. It's probably doing $30,000 to $50,000 net profit. They'll buy that. They'll get a potentially 1.5 to 2 times return on that over the course of the next 5 years. But they'll use the cash flow for supplementary income. You've got a second type of buyer, which is more like an acquisition entrepreneur, and the acquisition entrepreneur is buying their next job, and so they obviously get the benefit of the income, but they're getting 30 to 40% ROI every year on their investment, and that's something you can't get from a San Francisco investment property. And the buy-in's far lower, right? So the other thing is, most people still forget that most businesses fail. Forget about startups, right? Forget about venture-backed startups. Most businesses fail, and they fail in the first 5 years. So you're actually fast-tracking your pathway to viability and sustainability. So if you can acquire something that's doing $100,000 revenue, well, the business owner has spent a year or 2 or 3 getting to that point. And so you're buying something that is materially less likely to fail. The third type of buyer is the obvious one. That's the institutional. And the scary thing about the institutional buyers is they're actually moving down market so fast that the side hustlers and the acquisition entrepreneurs are coming up against these sophisticated buyers, and they're losing. And that's a little bit like going up against a baby boomer who is buying an investment property, and you're a first home buyer, and you can't compete because they know how to get a deal done and you don't yet. And so it is a little bit analogous to buying property, actually, in the sense that it does come down to your deal-making capability and your sophistication, and of course, size of wallet. So the institutionals will do anything. They'll do deals which are going to enable them to add an inorganic growth path through the acquisition of revenue. That's the most common, right? But they'll also do deals which give them access to a media property that helps them with acquisition of audience and audience acquisition. And they would have had to go to the usual types, Facebook, Twitter, Google, Reddit, Quora to acquire that audience. But now they just acquire it, they farm it, they use it, and they've got their own media entity. They will buy things which are subscale. They'll buy things which are profitable. They'll buy things which are not profitable. They'll buy things which have big audiences, which aren't deriving revenue yet. So everyone's a little bit different. Their buy box will shift, but the buying community is extraordinarily dynamic.
Hey, we'll get back to the conversation in a moment after a word from our sponsors.
We all know the struggle: manual spend processes, fragmented systems, and the constant battle to stay on top of company finances. What if there was a way to cut out busy work, like chasing approvals and reconciling transactions across systems? That's where Rippling Spend comes in. Trusted by thousands of businesses, Rippling Spend is a comprehensive platform that consolidates all your expense needs, corporate cards, bill pay, and expense management, into a single user-friendly solution. Backed by top investors and over $1 billion in funding, they're dedicated to providing exceptional value to their customers. Imagine this: when a large invoice arrives, Rippling automatically routes it to the right person for approval, based on the value, vendor, or any other custom policy. Rippling automatically generates bills from invoices in seconds, routes them to the right approvers, and syncs everything with your accounting system, eliminating manual processes while giving you complete control and visibility. Now, extend that level of automation and control to your corporate card spend as well. You can automatically issue Rippling's corporate cards to manager-level new hires that have preset limits, so they can spend up to $50 on team lunches, while the rest is rejected at the point of transaction. Plus, earn market-leading rewards on every purchase, rewarding your company for everyday spending. Ready to revolutionize your company's spend? Sign up today at rippling.com/turpentine for a free demo and get 1 month free. That's rippling.com/turpentine. Start your free trial today.
Hey, finance leaders, do you remember when Amazon didn't have to charge sales tax on every online purchase? Well, 10 years later, we see sales tax on e-commerce everywhere. That wave is now hitting SaaS and the digital economy, and Anrok is here to help you navigate this new tax compliance journey. As your software business grows, so does your global tax liability. But keeping up with ever-changing regulations across multiple jurisdictions can be overwhelming. That's where Anrok comes in. Anrok is the enterprise-grade solution that automates sales tax compliance worldwide. Anrok tracks your exposure, calculates tax, and handles filings all in one platform. As a Turpentine Finance listener, you can get a free Nexus study from Anrok today. See your economic and physical nexus in real time by connecting your billing and HRIS tools. You'll get a clear view of your exact exposure in any jurisdiction, plus a live review with a SaaS tax expert. Don't let tax compliance slow down your growth. Visit anrok.com/turpentine to claim your free Nexus study and take control of your SaaS tax strategy. Anrok, empowering software businesses to grow across the globe. So this is great. So I think there's a couple different places I'd like to go through. There is this sort of dream a little bit of sort of this, I've made some money in tech. I've been an executive in an early stage tech, and I have this somewhat like romantic dream of buying a business, my quote retirement business, though, not owning a small business is not retirement. So should we, let's think about the first sort of thing of just, I have a little excess income. I'm sitting in maybe San Francisco or the United States. And so I typically angel invest, not typically a cash flow generating business. It's like I'm a bet on 15 years from now, maybe there'll be a cash flow. Let's first talk about this. How should buyers or investors that are thinking about sort of diversifying for cash flow purposes, how should we think about that?
So I'd think about it through a couple of different perspectives and lenses. Maybe I'll tell a quick story. So there's a gentleman he doesn't live in San Francisco now. I think he's in Sebastopol. But the use case is this. He sells his business to Yelp. His case study's on our website, so it's not a big deal. I can use his name. So his name's Devin Wright. He's based in San Francisco. He sells his business to Yelp. He works at Yelp. He's an exec at Yelp. He starts to talk to people who are buying digital assets, and he starts to understand the unit economics, the economics of buying a business which is cash flowing. He looks at the multiples. He thinks, wow, those multiples are very different to the multiples I'm used to seeing. And he buys one of these, and his intention is to either roll up other like businesses or scale this using his marketing capability. So he buys Equestrian Co. And Equestrian Co. is an e-commerce business. And it's an e-commerce business which obviously is selling equestrian apparel and equestrian related gear. And so why does he do that? He does that because he has a skill set that he believes he can apply to the business. He does that because he believes that the yield, the return on investment on his $500,000 investment or thereabouts is going to be better than where he might otherwise place that money or that capital. He also believes that he can learn from operating one of these businesses and not only apply his skill set, but develop a new skill set. He also believes that if he can do this once, he can probably start to build a portfolio of businesses and build a room of operators around him who will take responsibility for these, and then he will become essentially a roll-up. Now, the way I would think about it is, what categories do you like? What skill set do you have? And what budget do you have to deploy? And if you're going to pay between, call it 2.5 and maybe up to 6 times net profit, you can think about it through that lens. But you can also think about it through the lens of, often these operators who hustle their way to $500,000 annual revenue, they're brute force entrepreneurs, right? So if you can come in with an operational skill set, it tends to be that there are little tweaks that you can make to these businesses, much like private equity would try to do in the middle market. You can do in the subscale market and achieve substantially greater return faster. And so that is the lens that a lot of people will apply as well.
Got it. So in that case, that would be sort of the same business owner is maintaining a business owner. You're buying a piece of it, bringing in some advisory to accelerate it, and then taking a dividend or buying, or the majority buying these businesses outright.
Yeah, the most of them are buying these businesses outright. I mean, clearly someone who is doing this kind of portfolio roll-up thing, they've built a team around them. Someone who is buying their first asset, they will tend to operate, get it to a scale, and then hire in. You do get people who do interesting creative deal structuring where they'll say, hey, I get it. You're cash poor. You're a great operator. I want to operate like a Clearco or a Facebook Finance or a Stripe or PayPal. I'm going to give you $500,000. I'm going to take 90% off your hands. I will then pay you a salary. You'll have 10%. I'll give you my advisory. You keep running it. And then we'll go and build it into something 3 to 5 times bigger than it is today. And then we'll exit it at that point in time. In which case, it's more a financial investor, but they do own the business. They're buying 90% of it. It's essentially a buyout.
What are some tips, tricks? Like, let's just say I'm a first-time buyer and I'm coming in and I'm looking. I have to compete, like you said, the first-time buyer versus the boomer. Boomer knows how to get it done. They got more business, they more expertise. Maybe they can pay up a little bit more than you're willing to pay. They sort of know it. How do you find a diamond in the rough?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I mean, so the reality is, I guess much like buying a great home or investing in a great startup, it's not quick. And we actually would never encourage anyone to come in extraordinarily aggressively and buy within the first 30 days of their starting to contemplate this move. It just doesn't really work for anyone. So short answer is, my advice would be establish the business model that you think is a best fit for you. And it's not just that SaaS is sexy, therefore, hey, I'll go after SaaS. I mean, it's hilarious how many buyers I meet who say, hey, can you find me a great SaaS asset on the platform? Sure. Do you know how SaaS businesses operate? No, but they make recurring revenue, right? So, we would encourage people to think about their skill set and think about the business model that's going to best match their skill set. And we would then encourage people to think about their budget, halve it, and then leave some money to ensure that the business can be invested in, because you and I both know that some days it rains and other days it pours.
It does. This is true. What are some of the hottest sectors right now? And what do you think are some of the sectors that are either new or emerging or underappreciated?
Yeah, so I guess much like Zillow, again, we have a data insights layer, like they have a research layer, and it's free. You can get it on the platform at any given time. Check out Flippa, just hit data insights and you'll see what's going on there. And so it shows you buyer intent. And buyer intent is a good indication of where buyers are going. Now, remember, investors in this world, subscale world, they're not really interested in placing moonshot bets. So it actually doesn't move as much as you would think it does. So people are looking for D2C sites, so Shopify businesses, big commerce businesses, WooCommerce businesses. People are looking for AdSense and Amazon associate-backed WordPress blogs. People are looking for iOS and Android apps with high daily active usage. You do get some, categories that during times of economic difficulty shine through. So, people are currently looking for businesses which are finance orientated, businesses which are home and home economics orientated, businesses which are travel industry orientated, because it feels like travel is doing really well right now. And then, of course, we get some really cool intent data into what's coming next. So we've just launched Chrome extensions, plugins, AI, because we've started to see buyer intent start to creep up. But, realistically, I think you're 2 to 3 years away from seeing AI being the asset type that dominates the Flippa platform.
So I have to admit, I think you said you sold a YouTube channel for $1 million recently. That's surprising. What are some other ones that might be surprising to me? And then I'd love to hear any that I'm sure every once in a while you get some that are surprising to you too.
Yeah, so first, that's the really obvious, albeit they're fun because they're often cross-border, so you get to watch international trade play out. So San Francisco-based business called Sporkle. I think it's the world's largest online trivia business. It's run by Ali Adair, who was the first employee and CTO at Napster. He has a great business, and he acquired Typing Test. And that Typing Test was a business out of Helsinki. Typing Test, sort of $2 to $3 million asset, very, very big audience. And clearly, as the name would suggest, it's about typing testing. So that's kind of fun because we get to watch the cross-border commerce layer play out on the platform, and 67% of our deals are cross-border. So it's actually a real global trading platform, and I love watching that play out. You get Launch Potato, Florida-based publisher. They buy a GDPR compliance blog called All About Cookies, and they pay $5 to $10 million for that asset. It's a 13-page blog about GDPR compliance. It has an enormous backlink profile. It's a predominantly passive asset with a one employee headcount. Lots of fun stuff like that.
Love hearing stories like that. What was the last one that like surprised you that is atypical?
Yeah, and I wouldn't say necessarily atypical, but if you take something like Personality Max, okay, so it's a personality testing business, and it's a big category. And so buyers aren't stupid. They look at categories that they believe are recession-proof, categories that they believe will have huge amounts of audience acquisition capability, categories where they imagine that there's a good free organic traffic source. And so, this business was running, huge numbers of personality tests. And so outside of its revenue and profitability, the buying base just went nuts for the audience size. And so the auction, we have auctions, we have fixed price businesses, we have auctions. The auction went absolutely berserk. There was like 150 bids in a 48-hour period of time. It sold in like a week, and it sold for, $250,000. And so that just moved so fast that it even shocked us. And so buyers are funny. Like, you don't necessarily know that something is as sexy as they do, and then they will tell you what's going on and what's about to happen. I think the funnest ones are where buyers realize something that the sellers don't. And so there was a business called Water Marquee, and Water Marquee was a watermarking software. And so wedding photographers and photographers of all sorts would, log in on a Monday, upload all of their images, and this software would watermark 100,000, 10,000 batches of images and send them back to the photographer, so the photographer could send them to their client, and the client could make an informed decision as to whether they wanted to buy them. Anyway, so it's doing this hundreds of thousands of times a month, and it was one-time use, right? So the payment model was one-time use. So buyers are like, what's the repeat rate of your customer base? And the owner comments, yeah, like very high, like, 75% repeat rate. And all the buyers are like, okay, you don't know it, but this is actually a SaaS business. You just haven't recognized the opportunity. So they paid an absolute fortune for it. At least it looked that way at a multiple level. But the reality is the buyers were smart enough to know that they're about to turn it into something operationally more efficient than it had historically been. And I just love that stuff.
Yeah. I think that's not too atypical. I think what you mentioned before, private equity, like coming in and saying, here's a bunch of changes we can make and totally like change the trajectory of this company. Super insightful. One of the things that I think is also really fascinating, and there's so many lessons to be learned, is what are some of the things that tank a deal?
Yeah. So greed. Sellers will say that they want a deal of a certain value. A buyer will come in at that value. It all happened very quickly. All of a sudden, the seller says, well, hang on, we must have mispriced it. I'm going to substantially increase my ask. And, buyer gets annoyed. Seller looks arrogant, and all of a sudden the deal's off. Obviously, due diligence. So you can have a situation where at the end of the day, small business owners are outstanding at running small businesses. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are fantastic accountants and practitioners within a business as to, its operational cost base and how you manage that cost base. And so you can have some costs which are not disclosed at the levels that they should. So someone will estimate hosting expenses of whatever, let's call it $1,000 a month. Turns out that they're actually, $1,350 a month. And that $350 difference monthly makes a substantial difference to how the cost base actually is and the profitability of the site. And therefore it changes the buyer dynamic, and buyers get upset and sellers say, well, I wasn't trying to be, deceiving, but I was. And that can certainly ruin a deal. And we, of course, find that out through the due diligence process, and Flippa offers due diligence for all the buyers. I think the other thing probably is time. So if buyers are taking a long time and act sophisticated and then ultimately send through rubbish LOIs, and our platform, so we now have platform LOIs to try to create uniformity. But we had historically seen really rubbish and garbage API LOIs that people have clearly downloaded from the web. They've submitted on the platform, and the seller looks at it and says, "My God, you've got no idea what you're doing. The terms of the deal haven't been included. You've invented stuff on the fly," and that will kill a deal.
Yeah, ChatGPT, please write me a LOI for a online business in Helsinki while I am sitting in. Yeah, I can see that.
And so now we have, we've worked really hard to integrate the legals that matter to 99% of business owners. So we've got LOIs, APAs, SPAs. It's all modularized, and then we have e-sign built right into the platform to try and drive that efficiency layer.
I love it. When you talk about some of the financials, we hear that in almost every deal, from public companies to like we work at private companies, understanding the true financial health of a company. How much does your time at Xero play an impact on some of the changes you've made at Flippa?
Yes, so certainly before joining, I joined the company 6 years ago, stepped into the seat as CEO, and one of the things I said almost immediately was we need to build data integrations. We need to understand the financial and operational performance of these businesses. We can't rely on the teams to do all of the work. We have to rely on cloud adoption, and specifically cloud accounting adoption. I think there's a couple of things to note. When I was at Xero, I think cloud accounting adoption globally was just 14%. So that's obviously shifted a lot, but I would still imagine we're only still talking about 25 to 30% cloud accounting adoption. So it surprises us how often a business owner generating between $100,000 and up to $5 million doesn't have clean books. And so that really impacts your likelihood of being able to sell. The financial literacy of a business owner is critical to getting a deal done, and therefore use of cloud tech and cloud accounting in particular has made life a lot easier for those business owners. What we've started to do is pull together a financial story based on those data integrations. So clearly you'll learn something from Xero, but you'll learn other things from Stripe. And so we can start to talk about, average order value and help business owners understand how their average order value might differ from the rest, and then benchmark that back to prospective investors and buyers on the platform. And I would say my experience at Xero has been critical in adopting those changes, but also understanding the importance of, financial literacy and small business ownership.
How do we? You're on sort of the wave of technology and online businesses becoming bigger and bigger, clearly like $1 billion of sales. You've talked a lot about integration. So that sort of means more and more information is sort of becoming online. And the cloud accounting adoption is increasing, but still sort of a fraction of the price. And one of the challenges is that small business owners, any really founders, are usually passionate about a problem, not the back office of accounting for that problem. How do you, or how should small business owners think about that? Because you get into a business because you found a niche or you found a problem, but these are really impactful things in your ability to sell. Does it just come across as it's a tax on your sale price, or can Flippa help educate and make small business owners more literate to make that sale process more effective and efficient?
Yeah, two parts to this. So we do have a due diligence team, and we've started to bring that due diligence team into the onboarding process, which we hadn't historically done. And the reason we're doing that is because we've found out that a lot of good quality small business owners do need some assistance up front in preparing their business for sale. And so on top of that, we've started to hire actual M&A advisors, right? So we've got everyone goes through an accreditation, everyone is certified, and in many cases, we are hiring ex-wealth managers, ex-investment bankers to actually work across the platform to help business owners prepare their business for success. So that's kind of the Flippa service layer. But I would encourage business owners to think about fractional capability. So if you don't know marketing, we've all heard of fractional CMOs, right? If you don't know accounting, you can hire a fractional CFO. And so go to Upwork, go to Fiverr, go to these environments where you can outsource all the stuff you're not good at, all that back office stuff. And from day dot, operate clean books. It'll make you a better business owner anyway. Every Friday, you'll understand your performance better. You'll understand your cost base better. You'll be able to make informed decisions and let experts do the work. And instead of coming to the table finally saying, hey, wouldn't it be great to sell this business? Doing that stuff earlier on improves the probability of you ever being sellable in the first place. And so, better businesses are built on the cloud. There's no doubt about it. And this was something that for a long time at Xero. Now, admittedly, I haven't been at Xero since, 2010 or something. But, the thing that we were selling was better businesses are built in the cloud. You get the data, it comes in real time. You understand your business performance. There's daily reconciliation that happens. You can set up daily reports, weekly reports, monthly reports. All that insight that you get from operating on top of those platforms is really valuable. And when you think about an exit, when you think about liquidity, when you think about the likelihood of you finding a buyer for your business, buyers don't want to buy a mess. In fact, what people don't realize in subscale M&A, they're actually rarely buying for long-term opportunity. They're buying on historical performance. So this is not startup investing. I don't say, congratulations, Blake, you're doing $30 million annual. I'm going to pay 10 times revenue multiple because I believe there's $1 billion outcome here. What they're actually saying is, congratulations on delivering $500,000 last year. I would like to deliver $500,000 next year.
Yeah.
And so subscale M&A is a function of prior performance, not historical and not future opportunity.
And when those aren't clean, you mentioned this sort of like, I think my cloud bill is like 1,000 and maybe it's 1,350 or things that can have a meaningful impact. Does that typically tank a deal entirely? Like you just lose trust and you're like, I can't believe, if I can't believe this, I can't believe anything? Or does it change the price or something else?
So it depends on the personalities. So let's say it's an honest mistake. Let's say for argument's sake, I have opened the books and I've said, look, I'm extraordinarily good at buying, designing, and selling baby good. And I can do that to the tune of $2 million annually. That's what I'm good at. But Sasha, I just want to let you know, as you dig in here, you will notice that I know nothing about SEO and I can't tell you what keywords my site ranks for. I buy Google ads, but I've never done that profitably. And really my business is being built on a great brand, word of mouth, and some kind of organic means of acquisition. And I don't really know how I derived it. Well, that'll probably go fine because you've been honest and upfront about your deficiencies. And as you make mistakes through the selling process, they will be forgiven. On the flip side, let's say you say, Sasha, I'm going to tell you how my business works. And, you can conduct due diligence, but this is just the way it works. And I'm a bit stubborn, I'm a bit smug, and I'm not respecting the process. Then when Sasha finds out something which is inaccurate, you lose faith and trust. And yes, it can tank a deal.
Got it. Fascinating, but not too dissimilar to a lot of diligence processes. Take it seriously. You got to mind your books. What does What does the future of online business flipping look like? And what's a vertical that you would like to see start emerging more?
Well, so I think the future is frankly really bright, and there's a few obvious reasons for that. First, it's still a nascent industry. The reality is, very few people, even in markets like San Francisco, have contemplated buying a subscale business. So I would expect, and this isn't rocket science, there will be more digital assets in 5 years' time than there are today. I would expect that there will be more buyers and investors in the marketplace, adding liquidity to the marketplace in 5 years' time than there is today. I would expect that AI, regardless of which way it ends up going, will be a great facilitator of business ownership. And so therefore there should be more, not only more digital assets, but just, generally speaking, great acceleration of business creation. Now, last year in the US, there were 5 million new business originations. It'd be interesting for you and I to chat in 5 years' time and look at what the number of business originations actually looks like. I suspect it will be greater than that. Probably the other thing which is clearly happening right now is that there is a shift from traditional business models to omni-channel business models. And those people who are not built as digital natives will become digital natives. I think probably the other thing that is really important is global trade. And so, we are seeing huge numbers of businesses come out of Latin America, huge numbers of businesses come out of Southeast Asia that are on our platform selling to American and European buyers. And so I think that you will get global markets play out on our platform in a way that is unimaginable today. So all of these things obviously make me extraordinarily confident about our platform and where we're going. Like any other decent business, you've got to execute really well and you've got to do that quick. I think as it relates to the verticals, I think that the verticals that exist today will be the same. And the reason I say that is because I just can't imagine that the dominant tech companies of the last decade are going anywhere for the next decade. And so I think that buying D2C e-commerce businesses will occur in much the same way it does today, just at a different volume. And I think that the deal sizes will get bigger. And I think that the types of buyers will evolve, but I think the verticals will remain intact. I think that what you will see, though, is the ecosystems shift. And so we used to sell Shopify stores. Now we sell Shopify plugins. We used to sell WordPress blogs. Now we sell WordPress plugins. And so I think that the platform economy will evolve in such a way that the types of assets we see on the platform will change.
Oh, that's so cool. All right. Well, this is awesome. This is so great. So for people that want to get started, either buying or selling, how do you recommend? How do you get started?
Yeah, first thing to do is seriously spend some time having fun with the Flippa data insights, because you can see what buyers are looking for. You can see multiples. It's all transparent. You can see time to sell. You can see buyer liquidity around the world in different markets. You can see average budgets. You can see trending terms. It's all there. It's very fun. We're continuing to add to it. It's a great place to start. The second thing I would do is literally hit the Flippa search box. Don't type anything in. Just hit the search button and start to click in and have a look at the different assets. And start to imagine, start to try to figure out what makes a good asset good and how do the multiples look? And can you imagine yourself playing in that league, that game? Think about the categories. Are you into fashion? Great. Look at fashion related sites. Are you into tech? Great. Look at tech. If you're trying to understand SaaS, look at the different benchmarks. Try to understand what is good churn versus bad churn. Just use it like a mini MBA. So much. There's 6,000 assets on the platform. You can learn a lot about running a business when you study those 6,000 different assets.
Oh, it's fascinating. It's like the danger of opening up like Zillow or Redfin when you're like kind of like teasing around, looking at a house, you just like get fascinated, or just like casually open up TikTok. I went to Flippa to prepare, and I think I've spent hours just like digging through it. It's fascinating. It's super fun. FLIPPA.com. It's super great. Blake, thanks so much for coming on the show. This was awesome. Really appreciate it. How can people get a hold of you if they want?
Yeah, LinkedIn's my go-to. So if you want to connect, I'd love to connect. Say hello. Let me know that you heard me on the pod, and I'll help you out.
Awesome. And we'll link to Flippa in the show notes. Enjoy your business scrolling. All right, Blake, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Turpentine Finance. Share it with your executive team, direct reports, friends, and family. And if you want to support the show, the best ways are to leave a review wherever you're listening and subscribe. Turpentine Finance is part of Turpentine, the podcast network behind Moment of Zen, Turpentine DC, Age of Miracles, and more. Shows for experts by experts in tech.